Electricity Minister Kgosientso Ramokgopa is today conducting another oversight visit. This is at the Kusile power station, where 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity is offline. He will inspect repairs to 3 units at Kusile, which are expected back online later this year. The Eskom power station has blamed, or should I say, has been blamed for a shortage of generation capacity for higher stages of load shedding. Well, Newzroom Africa's Govan Whittles is at Kusile ahead of the minister's visit there. Govan, good morning to you. The question, I suppose, is what can this minister realistically do to solve the situation here? We've heard about his non-existent powers, but of late there are opinion pieces being penned about him being something of a laughing stock because all he does is make visits. So what can he realistically do?
Good morning, Oli. From this 166 billion rand facility opened in 2013, was supposed to be providing enough power to protect us against load shedding in the wintertime. Instead, today we have the electricity minister who hasn't got any powers in terms of the Electricity Regulation Act, and whose ministry is funded by the private sector without any budget, coming to see how far along the repairs are to these units. And there is a sense of irony that is shared between Kusile and the Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientso Ramokgopa, and that's that both Kusile and the Electricity Minister don't have the power that they hope they would have by this time. Of course, there is no clarity. There's been no government gazette indicating whether the minister would be granted the power to procure electricity on an emergency basis. And there is some clarity here at Kusile, and we know that the units that are offline will only come back after winter. We know that from the Eskom State of the System report. The minister is here to ensure that the repairs are going well. He's met a number of private sector individuals who've commented on what South Africa needs to stabilize its electricity generation. What's interesting here, Oli, is that this visit to Kusile obviously takes place as Eskom blamed what's going to happen this winter on the failure of Kusile to provide power, 3,000 megawatts. That's 3 stages of load shedding. Load shedding has been scheduled between stage 3 and 5 for this week, definitely for today. But what's interesting about it is that the minister last week indicating at a power conference that he fully supports the notion of power ships, not necessarily car power ship, but does support having generation capacity offshore and plugging that into the grid. And he says that would take about 3 months to get into the grid. Well, that's the winter period. So there is nothing that the electricity minister can do which will spare South Africa from a cold and dark winter. This is just an oversight visit to check whether the repairs are going well. And after this, we should get more clarity about whether or not he believes he'll get the emergency procurement powers from the president. But then we'll have to wait for the government gazette to see if it really happens.
Govan, final question to you. I mean, you and I can talk about these visits and what they possibly mean. Here's an important bit. People on the ground are suffering. As we speak, there's a young man from that very province where you are, 13 years old. He died at a protest, allegedly shot with live ammunition. And the understanding is that that bullet may or may not have come from a police officer's gun. This was a protest convened specifically to protest against the lack of electricity in that area, which had been gone at least for the last 4 days, as the people there said. The minister has got to respond to these questions. How is he likely to navigate that?
Well, the minister can only promise to raise issues within the cabinet. in response to what are increasing electricity protests. What South Africa faces is not only the failure of Eskom to improve its energy availability factor, which is generate enough power to stop the load shedding, but also what appears to be increasing cases of cable theft that are resulting in municipal outages, leaving municipalities to deal with those by themselves. Eskom's generation officials have said that they're no longer keeping a close eye on sabotage at the power stations. We're here at this facility, which we'll show you, because what happened was an explosion at one of the units, which had left it without the ability to generate power at least one of the big units. The repairs that they'll need to undertake are so vast that it'll take months, and in the same breath, the repairs being undertaken by municipalities for cable theft that are leading to these 4-day, 5-day outages and causing these protests are expensive and appear to be conducted on an ad hoc basis, sometimes not successfully, leading to prolonged outages and, of course, leading to more protests over electricity. So we'll ask the Minister what his response is to increasing protests about electricity across the country, whether they anticipate this will get worse into the winter, and who will take responsibility for the life of that 13-year-old boy who was killed during an electricity protest. Apparently, or allegedly, after the police had fired live ammunition. We are seeing increased responses to these types of protests by the police's public order policing units, and we do believe that they anticipate it will get worse into the winter time. But for now, Kgosientso Ramokgopa, Dr. Ramokgopa, is focused on Kusile. He wants to see what's being repaired at which rate, but for all intents and purposes, this visit is merely just another show of him doing his work, while it's not clear what power he has to make impactful changes that will lead to more stable electricity supply.
Live for us at the Kusile Power Station in Mpumalanga. Govan Whittles there. Thank you very much.